Ripple's XRP Escrow currently holds billions of XRP, but it could be taken over by global banks or even the IMF. And there was a time when JP Morgan actually tried to buy Ripple's Escrow. In today's video, we're going to explore the possible future of Ripple's Escrow and how it could reshape global finance. In 2017, Ripple locked up 55 billion XRP into an escrow wallet that they control that's cryptographically locked, and they have it appropriated to where 1 billion XRP are released onto the market each month. Any amount that is not used for development or liquidity or partnerships is rolled back in on the end of that escrow, and today they have about 42 billion XRP remaining in that escrow. So the purpose is simple. It ensures control, a gradual release of XRP by preventing sudden market flooding of XRP, basically to hold price stability and to continue to trial and test the network while they're building out the solutions for the banks and other use cases, right? So it's supposed to be stable. It holds ranges for extended period of time, which is really frustrating for a lot of people that hold the asset, but it actually is to the benefit and the adoption of the network long term. So let's start with one surprising fact that I mentioned earlier. JP Morgan actually tried to buy Ripple's Escrow. Why would they do that? Well, because JP Morgan recognizes that XRP's potential as a bridge currency for global transactions would position them, if they controlled the escrow, as basically the monopoly, right? Like Ripple is right now, they control the escrow, and if JP Morgan controlled it, then they would be the one being able to manipulate the price of the network or do what they needed to. And Ripple told them no. Despite JP Morgan's offer, Ripple chose to remain in control of the escrow, emphasizing its mission to distribute the XRP gradually and build a broader global financial infrastructure without centralized control. So JP Morgan's attempt wasn't just a one-off, though. It was a clear sign that there's value there and that the powers that be don't necessarily want a decentralized network in control over things, because they won't be able to push people around like they have in the past. So, but this does raise a question, right? It raises the question, could the IMF or other global entities be next in line to acquire this massive reserve of XRP? Well, in 2017, Ripple also met with the IMF. So it's interesting that they chose to go ahead and do the escrow after they met with the IMF. Is there a corollary there? Is it possible? Is it uncorrelated? We'll find out, right? So why would global banks or even the IMF want to control Ripple's escrow? Well, it's simple. Global liquidity. XRP acts as a universal bridge asset settling cross-border transactions instantly. By controlling the escrow, banks could access a massive liquidity pool, eliminating the need for costly nostro vostro accounts where banks have to pre-fund other accounts in other currencies and have the volatility and the risk associated with that. So this makes XRP not just a digital currency, but a strategic asset in the global financial system, period. Like, just Google global bridge currency and see what comes up. So what about the IMF? If XRP is recognized as a global settlement asset and designated a Tier 1 asset by the BIS, it'd probably be after the IMF were to acquire it, but the IMF could view it as a tool for global financial stability, especially in emerging markets. So taking control of Ripple's escrow could allow the IMF to, 1, maintain liquidity during global crisis, 2, facilitate international aid and transfers, and 3, potentially support CBDCs as a bridge currency. An IMF takeover isn't that far-fetched, really. The organization has been exploring ways to integrate digital currencies into their special drawing right, or SDR basket, like an ESDR, a lot of people may have heard that term, which currently includes fiat currencies like the dollar, euro, yen, and a couple others. It's dependent, and the ratio is designated on the GDP of each country. So let's explore possible scenarios. Scenario A, Ripple retains control of the escrow and uses it to continue to grow their business and partnership. This aligns with Ripple's current strategy to drive adoption of XRP as a bridge currency and expand its product of ODL, or on-demand liquidity. This approach would also increase XRP's adoption gradually. It wouldn't be a big spike, like a lot of people are hoping for. And it may not create the massive demand that really would lead to the adoption of the network at scale. So I don't think that that's likely. And for one company to maintain control of that much money just seems very unlikely to me, especially if it were to be adopted. Now, let's consider scenario B. A global bank or consortium like the IMF is the one that acquires Ripple's escrow. And this would be done through a formal agreement where they would take over the wallet and the distributions and have control over the XRP as it was, distributed from the wallet on that monthly cadence. And then there would be a global intermediary that had vested interest across the world, aside from just one company being put in that position. So, and if that happens, it would, one, stabilize XRP's price by integrating in global liquidity pools between XRP and whatever currency sat in the SDR. It would increase demand by institutions that were adopting it, which would be huge, which people that are holding XRP would definitely want. And XRP would be used to support global trade and CBDCs. So again, that aligns with Ripple's mission. I think that they've done a lot of work on the back end here to put this in a position where they already have the partnerships, they already have the integrations, they already have started the conversation with a lot of countries and governments and institutions around launching stable coins and running DeFi and building out the tokenization of real world assets and utilizing XRP to settle. So if this happens, we could see XRP's price stabilize at a very high price, making it very appealing for institutions to adopt. But it would also mean a shift in control from Ripple to global financial authorities. And, you'd have to trust the IMF, right? If you think it's a good thing. So the last scenario, which I don't know how I feel about this one, but I thought I would throw it out here because it's in alignment with a lot of what the crypto bros and the community as a whole sees as the best solution, which would be a neutral, decentralized government body. Basically a DAO type situation where governments came together and they all had vested interest, but they all had voting in this ecosystem. And it wouldn't be one centralized body that had the power. It would be a consortium of governments that would come together and make decisions at a global scale for the distribution of the XRP. So they would take control of the escrow and ensure transparent distribution. And this would align with, like I said, the broader crypto ecosystem and I think a better, more transparent governance model for the escrow. And this would create a lot of more trust amongst the users because now you'd have participants across the globe that were involved with the decision making, and it would be transparent. A lot of what's built out on the XRPL is already like this. If you run a validator on the XRPL, you have to vote for specific amendments to come through. It takes 80% consensus across everybody in order for something to happen. And so, maybe all these governing bodies or banks or people that have vested interest in the network start running nodes and have a validator and they're voting on the outcome and the distribution of the escrow as it's released. I think that could be a way that it shakes out, and it wouldn't just be the IMF, or maybe the IMF is the custodian and it's still a consortium. We'll have to see how it all works out, but I'm excited at the possibility of that. So what does that mean for XRP holders? Like all these things, we've gone back and forth on these different scenarios. It ends up being positive. If it's one of the latter two things and Ripple does give up the escrow and we do see price appreciation, people that are holding XRP, you're going to get your day in the sun. So it would drive massive demand for XRP, likely leading to a significant increase in the price, right? So if Ripple retains control and adoption happens slowly, I just don't see it shaking out the way that people want it to. But the bottom line, if any of these scenarios shake out, it would eventually impact the price of XRP, and the latter two would, really push the price up. So for the future of XRP and Ripple's escrow, it's uncertain right now. Most people, they kind of poo-poo on Ripple for selling onto the open market and controlling price and holding stability. But again, like I mentioned before, I think this is really to continue to show stability of the network, tested in certain scenarios and corridors, and for settlement and for other applications. And when they're ready to turn the escrow over to one of these governing bodies, whether it's the IMF or something else that's a more decentralized system, I do think that's when we could potentially see the big jump that a lot of people are waiting for. Hopefully this was valuable for you. Maybe you learned some things that you didn't know. If you let me know what you think in the comments, we would love to hear it, and we will see y'all on the next one.